Hi everyone, so today we're going to be looking at a comparison between the Salomon Quest 4D Forces on the right here and the Salomon Quest 4D civilian version on the left. Won't be delving too much into the individual features, but hopefully this will be useful to someone who is considering choosing between one or the other. Now, Salomon Quest 4D has been around for quite a few years now, gone through a few updates and revisions in that time. So this civilian version is the Salomon Quest 4, as they call it now. As the name implies, it's the fourth iteration. And the Forces has gone through two iterations, both of these being the latest one in their category. So yeah, bottom line is they're both available for purchase currently and are the latest model in their lineup. So not much to go between these two boots. Some subtle differences which I'll go through. Now, they're both intended for trekking, hiking, and carrying heavy loads on your back. So the high ankle is definitely useful for that. We'll start at the bottom, so look at the outsole here. Now, as you can see, the Forces is totally brand new, and the civilian has been used a little bit. Now, the tread on the Forces has these cross hatchings in the lugs, which in theory should give you a bit more grip on slippery surfaces such as wet rock. But the civilian lugs are a bit more spaced out, which in theory should give you a bit better self-cleaning as you tread along mud and things like that. The biggest difference in the outsole, I'd say, is the heel. So hopefully you can see that on the civilian on the left. You've got a bit more of a pronounced heel, so it should give you a bit more grip if you're walking down a slippery slope. Helps to dig into the earth. So going up from there, both feature their 4D chassis system in the midsole, which is a very rigid plastic stabilizer here, combined with an EVA foam for cushioning. So you can see the stabilizer extending around there, and then this gray material is the EVA. Very similar on the Forces, so hard stabilizer, and then this material along here is the EVA. So not much between the two. I'd say out of the box, the civilian is a bit more flexible, a bit more comfortable. Not entirely sure if that's solely due to the midsole construction. I suspect it's also due to the leather thickness, which is the next thing I want to discuss. So hopefully in this cross-section view here, you can see the leather thickness there. So this is the Forces leather thickness. And then for comparison, that's the civilian leather thickness. So even with the naked eye, noticeably thinner on the civilian. So in that sense, it seems like the Forces is a bit better built. And I think that contributes to the slight increase in stiffness that this boot has. As far as weight goes, very minimal difference in weight. The civilian is a bit lighter, and on their website they do state that as well. Going up, talked about the leather a little bit. So on the Forces, the leather actually makes up the lacing components as well. So you can see they've looped the leather here and stitched it down to provide these eyelets for the lacing. On the civilian, similar kind of thing going on here, but going beyond that, plastic eyelets in these positions. And then the big change for the Quest 4 is this support strap on either side. So it is stitched down on the internal side, but it's free to move on the outside. This could potentially be a weak point in the future because you'll get sand and grit in this area eventually. And along with the movement of your foot, that friction can in the future wear holes in the material. So something I found out myself the hard way in these gusseted tongues. If you get sand in there and you leave it in for a prolonged period, it can actually degrade the material due to that friction. So a good idea to clean out your gusseted tongue on a regular basis. Laces are fairly similar. The forces laces do feel and look like they're paracord. The website doesn't state that though. One benefit I'd say of the civilian is that there's no stitching in this area. So even though that's not the high stress area, as you flex the boot, it's usually around this point here. Less stitching is always a good idea. So as you can see, the civilian doesn't have that in this fourth iteration. So moving up from there, the lacing up top, the Salomon lace locker in this position, always been a fan of those, works very well. It can, in rare cases, rip out because it's quite big and you can place quite a lot of leverage on it. Yeah, that's if you are faced with some extreme circumstances. And then these two open hooks up top. The Forces lace locker looks like it'll be a bit more robust, having these two rivets here, and then these two closed eyelets up top for obvious reasons. So for example, if you go to jump school or something like that, they do require to have closed eyelets. They won't allow you to have anything like this. But barring that, it's totally personal choice which system you want to go for. I'd say in my experience, the two are about the same as far as lacing speed goes. Moving up on the tongue and portions of the upper have this synthetic mesh for both. The Forces has this really good feature where they have an elasticated pocket on top of the tongue. So once you're done tying the laces, you can put the excess laces under there, stops them flopping around. The Forces does have this cord on top of the tongue. Not entirely sure why. I don't think it's a lace holder because it's not elastic, and if you put laces under there, they'll just come back out again. I've tried. As far as carrying or hanging the boots with it, there's always the heel tab for that, so I'm not sure exactly what this is for. Yeah, and moving up onto the collar, the civilian is slightly higher, so hopefully you can see that, slightly higher in ankle, very marginal though. And the Forces is fairly uniform up on the collar, so leather on the outside and then this moisture wicking material on the inside. The civilian, they've added this kind of neoprene, very plush material up on the back of the heel for this latest version. Yeah, very comfortable if you are walking downhill, etc. But again, I mentioned that potential issue of extra stitching, which this definitely has as well. As far as the heel goes, you can see this buildup of material on the back of the heel on the civilian, so pretty well enclosed. On the Forces, there are some open areas which are not known to be a failure point in any boot particularly, but again, open areas leave that potential for greater chance of degradation in the future. Both Gore-Tex, you can get the Forces in non-Gore-Tex if you prefer. The civilian is only available in Gore-Tex. As far as fit goes, the Forces is slightly wider, and you might be able to see that just from this top-down perspective as well. And on the inside, I can confirm that as well. They're both the same size, so the civilian feels like it's a bit more elongated, the fit, and a bit more narrow. So it looks like they've used different lasts for the two. Not that it's what I'd call narrow, the civilian version, but yeah, compared to the Forces, it's definitely a bit more on the narrow side. So if you have wide feet, I'd recommend the Forces for sure. Toe guard, virtually identical, not much difference there. As far as insoles, they're both Ortholite, so you can see that inside, totally identical Ortholite insoles. The Forces does have this rubber pad on the internal side, which they say is for climbing ropes and rappelling. As someone who's done quite a bit of rope climbing and a little bit of rappelling in the past, I'm not sure how much use this will be practically, because if you're rappelling, anyone who knows, who's ever been taught, is they tell you to angle your feet like this so that the rope passes and makes contact with this area as opposed to the inside of the foot, because any sort of friction on the rope will heat up this area extremely fast, no matter how much of a buildup of material you have there. So yeah, I'm not sure how much use that'll be in the real world, but it's there if you want it. Other features on the boots, I'd say that the Civilian is a bit more comfortable, as I mentioned, out the box, but I think that might contribute to it not having very good reviews up on the Salomon website as far as durability goes. So at least according to the US Salomon website, there's quite a few reviews up on there, and the ones that I've read, most of them are concerning durability in the long run, and that goes for both of these. So currently, as of the filming of this video, the Civilian has a rating of 3.8 out of 5, and the Forces has a rating of 4.2 out of 5. That's pretty significant as far as the discrepancy in quality or perceived quality by other users. So it looks like the Civilian isn't doing especially well as far as long-term durability is concerned. Personally, I can't speak to that myself yet because I've only started using this one, and this one is a loaner, so obviously haven't used it. But yeah, to summarize, I'd say not much to go between the two. The main thing I'd say is the width component. So if you have more regular sized feet, I'd say you'll be fine in the fit of the Civilian. And if you have wide feet, I'd recommend the Forces here. All right, so hopefully that was useful to someone. If you have any more questions, let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.